National Conference reflecting on 25 years of the Constitution starts in Midrand today, with President Cyril Ramaphosa expected to deliver the opening address. The conference will be attended by academics, political parties, civil society organizations and organs of state. It's expected to look at whether the Constitution has delivered the kind of society it envisioned. Newzroom Afrika's Govan Whittles is in Midrand and he joins us live this morning. Govan, very interesting, and we've reflected on it with a discussion with former Constitutional Court Justice Johan Krechler earlier on the AM report. It's interesting to see what kinds of discussions take place in the context where some will say it's not the Constitution's mandate per se to deliver on the promises. There are different arms of the state that are meant to bear out what the Constitution says.
Indeed, Michelle, it does seem to be a matter of implementation. And this discussion, the debate, the conference happening here today is incredibly well timed. It comes at a time when South Africans are grappling with whether or not the Constitution is being implemented to its full extent. And if it isn't being implemented to its full extent, who should be held accountable for that? And that's interesting because the people that will be taking part in this national conference are the people who are essentially at the coalface of implementing the Constitution. Some of those state organs, of course, include the judiciary, representatives from legislatures, notably the National Parliament, as well as, of course, the executive through the president, the leader of the executive being here, but then also mayors and political parties, officials at municipal level, and then the academics, the civil society groups, who are often the people that are trying to hold the people in power accountable at the most granular level of service delivery. One of the questions that this conference will grapple with is whether or not social stability has been achieved through the implementation of the Constitution. That speaks to whether the society is functioning in a manner where there aren't perpetual disruptions to daily life through demonstrations and unrest, but also whether the Constitution, because it makes provision for those demonstrations, allows for solutions to be born out of those demonstrations and for people to use those demonstrations to effectively hold power to account. There are, of course, a number of other issues which will be grappled with here, whether they've been able to produce an independent and transformative judiciary, whether the Constitution allows the economy to grow in a manner which is sufficient, whether it allows for good governance, and then they're reflecting on how the Constitution has enabled the kind of electoral reform or does it enable the kind of electoral reform that it envisioned, and whether that's been implemented. That issue is likely to be taken up quite sharply because of that electoral amendment bill still to go to the National Council of Provinces, which has been roundly rejected by civil society as imposing high prerequisites for independent candidates to contest in next year's national elections. So the field is broad here when it comes to the discussion, but the conversation is well timed considering the temperature of the country and the political climate that dominates our discourse on a daily basis at the moment.
Yeah, absolutely, Govan. One just wonders, I mean, obviously these kinds of conferences have their place. They are important. We need to tackle these kinds of issues and have these important discussions. But, you know, we hope it's not just a talk shop.
That's a risk that we face here. But what is interesting is that we're likely to have a number of the civil society organizations hoping to put forward proposals that they believe could strengthen certainly the implementation of the Constitution. And although we're likely to see some criticism of the Constitution here, we expect the focus to be on whether or not the implementation has been sufficient, if not, how it could be improved, and if it is to be improved, who needs to take responsibility for championing that cause. And even if they decide on those three crucial questions here, they'll be able to take it forward because they will have representatives from the National Parliament, representatives even from local local government, and then of course from the executive, from civil society groups, from labor organizations, who would be able to use the outcomes of this 3-day conference to then follow up on the conversations, on the decisions at other crucial fora, such as NEDLAC, such as the National Assembly, and then of course the multitude of engagements with civil society that we've seen the executive embark on, certainly during this 6th administration.
Govan Whittles, live to us there in Midrand. Thanks very much indeed for that preview.